This will be a biography of Stephen Crane. Mostly I'll be making this video because of this book, The Red Badge of Courage. I will eventually be making videos of the rest of his 4 short stories. But for now, primarily, we're just going to focus on his life. As young as he died at the age of 28, spoiler alert, he did accomplish a lot during that time of period. Just look at his Wikipedia article. He did a little too much for 28 years of his life, don't you think? But there have been people like him afterwards, so not much of an abnormal kind of thing nowadays. Right now, let's get to start with his story. He was born on November 1st of 1871 in Newark, New Jersey. This is a photo of him as a little kid, and apparently this was him at his home and in a sailor uniform. He was born towards the influential Cranes family. Apparently, allegedly, they were all descended from Jasper Crane. I say allegedly mainly because I cannot find the source to confirm this, but this is probably true. Check out this source for that. As a little kid, I should probably go here. As a little kid, he was always often very sickly, and he was always frequently affected by colds. In fact, when he was at the age of 2, his father wrote in his diary that he was being worried about his kid, mainly because he was always happened to be this fragile little kid who was very sick, such and such. But he was able to pull through all that. Before the age of 4, he was able to learn, and he taught himself how to read. He himself, before the age of 3, even taught himself how to write after seeing his brother writing and started to copy him. In December of 1879, which is when he was like around 8 years old, he wrote a poem about wanting a dog for Christmas. This would be his first surviving poem that we know of to this day. He was formally enrolled in school in like 1880. Before that, he was never formally enrolled in school. But during that time, he was there. In 6 weeks, he was able to go ahead and graduate 2 grades. Now, he himself described that this feels like somewhat of a lie that his mother would tell people at tea parties. But he himself was able to pull through all this, and he himself was probably surprised at how easy the curriculum was. Later, at the age of 14, he would enroll at the Pennington Seminary School, where he was here and learned a bunch of seminary things, and he was living with his brother. Later, his mother died on December 7th of 1891, and this would affect him very deeply. 2 years after enrolling at the Pennington School, he would go ahead and move towards the Claverick College, a quasi-military kind of school where he would excel in pretty much all the literature subjects. His friends and classmates described him as the kid who was barely able to pass math and science courses, but at least he was able to pass, and he would excel at literature courses way above everyone else's league. So he was beautiful in the sense of like a physical beautiness. He was never actually handsome, and he wasn't really that popular. But he was very good at baseball. In fact, sometimes he was caught sneaking and skipping classes to go ahead and play baseball as their star catcher. The school themselves was very lucky to have him as the star catcher. After his graduation, he would go ahead and start to go work for the Tribune, and that was where he went ahead and started publishing all of his articles, mainly about some instances that he was writing about. One time, though, he wrote an article that went ahead and offended some people, and because of that, those people complained a little too seriously about those articles. His brother, who was helping and owning the Tribune at the time, at least I believe he was owning the Tribune at the time. I may have misinterpreted the page of Wikipedia. Took down the article and defended his brother, though he did admit that he was somewhat of a hogwash kind of person and needed to be trained into those ideas. One thing for sure, though, is that the Tribune never published Stephen Crane's published his stories after that incident, even though Stephen Crane admitted that he was fired from the Tribune after that. The Tribune themselves initially denied those claims and said that he left on his own accord, and after some pressure from the Tribune, but that kind of debatable, mainly because as the fact I mentioned earlier, they never published his stuff after this incident. Later on, he would go ahead and work as a freelance writer. He would move to New York. And as you can already see, he had a terrible time trying to find work as a freelance writer. He tried to write a novel, and he wrote this book called A Girl of the Streets. This would later be known as Maggie, A Girl of the Streets. He added the Maggie later, mainly because this was what he was recommended to. He initially expected high sales and that he would become one of the big hotshot writers at the era. He himself copying and printed out 1 out of 100 books at the local print shop. But unfortunately, this didn't happen, and it was a major flop. He even remembers going ahead and giving away 100 copies of the books for free. But despite that initial failure, he would go ahead and start finding other stories to write about. He himself started to particularly hear about the Civil War stories, and the ones that he read were so bland that he always thought that he needed to write a book that would go ahead and preserve the actual identity of what he really thought about the Civil War. Trying to go ahead and create emotion towards the creation of his book. This would later become the book that we know today as The Red Badge of Courage. With this success imminent and Stephen Crane going ahead and doing lots and lots of non-questionable kinds of things, he would go ahead and start writing the next book and writing the next one all the way till the end of his life. This wouldn't cover up all of his debts, and he would have to go ahead and still live as a freelance writer because that's what he was most used to. One more thing I should mention is that because afterwards he would go ahead and get into lots and lots of trouble after being famous. I mean, he was involved in this a scandal where he tried to get 2 women out of trouble, allegedly trying to go ahead and harass them, but in reality blocking what their mother was saying about their lives. And with that, he went ahead and started going to report international news. He would travel around the world with his love, who was also his fellow news reporter, and that would go ahead and lead towards everything. On May 28th of 1900, he and his lover went to the Black Forest in Germany to have a relaxing time. And even though Stephen Crane himself was looking very of a downer, he would still go towards he would still go with her towards the pool. And later afterwards, on May 28th of 1900, he would have died at the Black Forest. This is his grave that his lover went ahead and put and created for him after he died at the Black Forest, having all of his remains moved here. Stephen Crane himself never really managed to be able to live all the way until he became 29. With his legacy enduring on, I thought that it would be great to mention what other people thought about him. Ernest Hemingway himself stated that The Red Badge of Courage is one of the greatest classics of American literature. And that's about it. That's the entire life of Stephen Crane. I know that was a lot to really try to compress. In fact, I cut out a lot of his life stuff just to make sure that this would fit into the video. But what's done is done, and I really think I cooked well with this video. A 28-year-old man's entire life history put into around 8 minutes. So that's it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Hunt and Sean. Next time I'll be seeing you about the Red Badge of Courage, and until then, Shihana, peace. Bye-bye.